everyone, and welcome to the ISC2 New Jersey chapter podcast, Unencrypted Chatter, Jersey Girls in Cyber Series. The Jersey Girls in Cyber Series is a platform dedicated to uplifting the voices of women in cybersecurity and those aspiring to join the field. My name is Mary Wong, and I am joined with my co-hosts Annetta and Claudia. We are very excited to be here recording our very first podcast episode. We have a very special guest today with us, Michael Redmond. Michael is a seasoned information cybersecurity professional with over 2 decades of experience. She has a strong educational background, holding a PhD in psychology, 3 MBAs, and multiple certifications. Throughout her career, she has been recognized for her contributions to the field, including being named one of the Women of Distinction by Women of Distinction magazine. She is also an accomplished author, having written several cybersecurity and risk management books. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. So, I just want to start off knowing that I've recently attended some of your talks, and I know how passionate you are about cybersecurity, governance, and leadership. So, how has your understanding of leadership evolved, and what unique challenges or opportunities do women face in the field?
It's interesting because unfortunately, it's sad to say, but a lot of the women that I've met, weren't encouraged to take technical classes in some schools when they were younger, where, it was available more to the fellows. And I know that that's not always. My daughter, her school was teaching programming by the time she was 9. And that's in a public school. So it depends on where they are in the country, where the school systems were and such. And that's a problem because it was one of these studies was done saying why so many women dropped out of cybersecurity programs after the first year in college. They just couldn't keep up with the programs because they hadn't grown up with it, the backgrounds. So I think it's coming in with what skill sets do they need to have, what do they need to learn. And I think that it's important to have a good female mentor, to work with you and keep that abreast. And today it's not just technology in cyber. You have to know governance, risk, and compliance. You have to know incident response. You have to know threat hunting. You have to know what are the threats with AI. It's so much broader, which in a way makes it better because if somebody's not great in doing a certain aspect, they're probably great in the other.
Michael, hi, this is Claudia. I'm a big follower of your work. I really enjoy talking with you when we sit next to each other on the security conference for ISC2 in New Jersey. So it was awesome. Following with your train of thought, can you describe an important moment in your career that sparked your passion for leadership in cybersecurity?
I would say that the leadership passion probably came in when I was in the Girl Scouts. I was in the squad leader and such. So again, I think that that those things for young people coming in, for people in college, to start taking leadership things in the community, etc., helping with that. But my thrive for leadership, the reason I said I went back for 2 MBAs over the last 5 years because the world has changed even though I've been in the field. So I did a survey on LinkedIn and I said, if you were to hire a top CISO, is it more important to you that they have a master's in the field? If so, do you want it to be in risk management or do you want it to be in information security? And hundreds of people responded. And I'm very lucky. I have over 16,000 followers on LinkedIn. So when I send out a survey, I get pretty good response. And I got 50-50. I said, you've got to be kidding me. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to register for both. They said, you can't do 2 MBAs simultaneously. So I said, well, that makes sense, so I registered for the risk management first, did my MBA in that and my thesis, which was really time consuming and researching. And then I went back for my other MBA in information security and it was on current, what's new. For each of them, we had to take 5 international standards and pass the certifications. And that becomes a key thing. So I think also as a leader, that's what I think is a key thing. What do you need to know? How do we prepare? It's not just about being a good manager. Plus, there are different type of leaders. I'm teaching the CISO certification course. It's CISO. It's not an ISO. It's not an ISC2. It is put out as what is a CISO certification. It covers risk management, information security, threat hunting, AI. It's all in the one course. It's 32 hours. Here's where you show up and you get the certification. And um, not an easy certification. I mean, I had to pass the exam myself, to take it. As a matter of fact, I flew. The only place was being taught last year originally was in Paris, and I flew to Paris with some friends to take the class. It was in English. We did it as a combination study and vacation because that was our vacation time. And so we studied during the day and went out at night.
I like that. I will follow your steps, definitely.
Take the exam the same week you're there. So I said, all right, that works out well. So I mean, it's kind of hard in Paris to be, studying all night. So but what was interesting is there were not many women in my class.
Hmm.
This is from all over the world. It was people from all over. The women that were in the class were people who, quite honestly, they were strong. They had confidence in themselves. They knew what they were doing on some level. And maybe it was because they were a parent and they saw what they did great as a parent. Some of them were tapping into that. Some tapped into, that they had a great job in high school where they counted on them. And so I think when you say leadership, it comes from different aspects. I
Mhm.
loved being the CISO. Recently, I was the CISO for one of the largest cities in the country, and we had 43 agencies and the largest cybersecurity, and we had quite a bit of teams, and we decided to set up our own security operations center. So I was managing all aspects, and I just loved it. I was the deputy CISO, but the CISO was on active duty for 14 months, so I got to double dip, both positions, and one pay, but both positions. And um, I realized that there's the course I just took at the CISO. It said the different type of leaders. Some leaders are trainers. They make sure they train their staff to do everything that they can think, work with them very patiently. Others are more standard oriented and they go through the standards and this is what I want you to meet, follow these standards verbatim with no training per se. But others are looking at it from a facilitator. Okay, so let's meet with HR, let's meet with this department. And it was interesting because in the course they were saying that the six different type of CISOs, I was expecting you to say, well, they switch back and forth from different roles, and they didn't. Many stay in that one role. And I find as a leader that I have to switch between the roles. One day I'm the trainer, one day I'm this, one day I'm the facilitator. It depends on the situation. And there's an old book that was very, very, very old, unrelated to cyber, speaking about women, and it's called, the title sounds terrible, but it's Who's That Woman in the President's Bed? It's about the first female president. And she did, and this was way back. This was done before I was even in college. The book was, really out. Not way, way, way back, but before college. It's not like it was recent. And they all decided to vote for their teachers, the students, and they did a campaign throughout the country because nobody liked the two candidates. And she got voted in. She became president, and they said to her when she went to Congress, "You have no skill sets." She said, "I've been a teacher. I've been a trainer." She said, "I have run budget. Have you ever run a whole household budget on a limited income?"
Exactly.
She said, "I
Exactly.
have dealt with conflict resolution. Have you ever had a 2-year-old?" This is all in the book. And it was
Definitely.
a powerful moment in my life that I said, this was so inspiring to me. I think I was, I don't know, 22 when I read it. And I said, this is so inspiring. And I said, what skill sets does a person have that they can lean back on? What did they do at some place? Were they a volunteer in a hospital? Were they doing different things? That means they're good in crisis. What was this situation? And I made a list of, I tell people to male or female,
I
make a list
agree.
of
I
all the
agree
things
with you.
that's unrelated to work. Everything you've done. If you had brothers and sisters, you had to, how did you assert yourself so that you actually got the extra pork chop at dinner, or whatever it might be. But there's a lot of skill sets that it's not the it's personality. It's developing those skill sets, and women especially, I think, have not been taught in some backgrounds to honor those things. You hear people say, "I'm just a housewife." I say, "Just." What have you done? Well, I take care of the kids. I said, so you're a tour guide because you got to make sure everybody gets to the right place at every time. You're working on schedules all day. You're working on the limited budget. You're planning the meals. Perhaps your spouse is bringing people home for dinner or for parties and such. You're running elegant parties. You're an event planner. And when I've said that, I've had people say, "Wow, I'm really busy."
Definitely.
I think that it's so important that women empower themselves by saying, "What have I done that I don't appreciate?"
That's amazing.
Definitely. Yes.
That's great, Michael. I also want to pick up on something you said earlier about having a mentor. So, how would you approach mentorship and empowering other women to step into leadership roles?
There's a way not to do it. It was the I've seen uh, some women standing at a conference saying, "I'm looking for a job. Can I hand you my resume?" I don't think any CSO or CISO wants to hold a paper resume with them the entire time they're going. They don't say, "Do you have any positions?" They don't know who the person is. They don't research it. So I think researching who you want, even when I wanted to move more from consulting and and more into the heavy CISO role, I spoke to a friend of mine who set me up with a very senior female CISO from a large international company. And I had said, "I would just like 20 minutes of your time. That's all I need is one time shot. Where do I go? What do I do? How do I move into this? What do I happen?" And she gave me probably 40 minutes after we got on the phone, and she set all the time aside. She was very busy. I mean, she is probably one of the busiest CISOs in the world for the large international company. And but she took the time because I limited the time. Say, I'm only going to do one phone call. This is not. I don't need you continuous. It's a
Mhm.
one-time deal, and then it's up to that person to say, "I'll be glad to continue that mentorship." If they feel they want to. And I think that is a better way to approach somebody. It's I've had people write to me on LinkedIn who I don't know, no introduction, say from all different countries, just saying, "I'm entering the field. Can I have half an hour to talk to you? Who are you? What do you do? I know nothing about you." Where in this case, I forwarded my resume to the person who, forwarded on to me. And if you're on LinkedIn, there's always somebody you're connected to that you can ask if they will ask their CISO or their threat hunting person to do it, or the head of their SOC, whatever position you're looking for. Ask them, would they ask them if they will spend 15 minutes with you? If you get 10 people each doing 15 minutes, that's 150 minutes.
Mhm. Definitely.
So, what do you think? What role do leaders play in establishing and maintaining a solid governance?
How to maintain the cybersecurity framework.
Yes,
Okay. Well, first we have to decide
governance
first you
framework.
have to decide which framework you want to do. So you could
Governance
stay within the
framework.
ISO framework. You could use COSO. Within the things you maybe also bring in some
Okay.
ITEL in. So which NIST is part of the framework. They have their own. So choosing which framework you want to do, and if somebody wants to be ISO certified as a company, they can actually say, "We're going to use ISO 2701 framework, but we're going to pull in these controls from NIST. We're going to pull in these controls from ITEL." And then they're creating or adjusting the framework so it's their own framework, and they can pull in additional controls, and they can still be certified as a company by doing that, as long as they list which additional controls they feel they want to pull from the others. And so I think that's important to be able to first decide the framework, get a buy-in from senior management,
Hmm.
and resources are considered the people that you have to have on your team, or other people's team that you're allowed to borrow, whichever way it might, that's the way it comes today. And then, I say borrow, but you can be working with the head of networking. Why would you, you don't have that on cyber, but you need the head of networking. You need the head of enterprise architecture. You need, whoever's doing this, all the other areas that are part of it. So I think that that's important. And also within the framework, maintaining it is doing your risk assessment at a minimum of once a year. Every year going back through all the controls you've taken, doing every risk assessment and say, what additional controls do we need? Or if we no longer do part of business, what controls do we not need? And then readjusting that. And then going back in and to each area and saying, what's changed with HR? What's changed with the data center? What's changed with our generators? Do we have different vendors? What's out there? What's changed? And bringing that in as part of the maintenance program. I usually do a gap assessment each year. First time I do a heavy one, but then I do just a quick gap assessment each year. What's changed? What isn't changed? Definitely the risk assessment. And it's not just for cyber. It's got to be for all of the organizations that touch data, which is a lot of organizations, a lot of people in your organization that touch data. Anybody that's touching data at all or accessing it. And, it's even the help desk. What information are they looking at and such. So I think all of that's important in the framework. But first, decide what framework you want. Get a buy-in from senior management. In some organizations, you have to have a buy-in from the board of directors, the board of trustees. I have them sign off that they agree. After the controls are done, I have the senior person sign off that yes, they are done and yes, they agree. I identify all the risk and say which budget we need to fix those risks. And if they decide that we cannot afford it this year, I have them sign that they are willing to assume the risk for another year. So, definitely make sure that if people say no, and they're a senior person, they should be willing to, sign it. I say this, it's actually required if you're ISO certified. They want to see that it's been approved, that, wasn't somebody lower making these decisions. And in some organizations, I've also 50%, in addition to working full-time job, a little bit of my background. For instance, the last 3 years, I was deputy CISO for a large organization, but they allowed me to take 1 week a month to teach during the day or do audits during the day or consult during the day because we have a 24-hour operation. So I would work with the clients from 8 o'clock until 5, and then I started work at 5 o'clock. I went to the office and I worked because we have a night team, we have a 24-hour operation. So it didn't really matter in cyber, which shift I was on, which ones I'm working, and when as a CISO, you're working all the time. One of the things that I did was I do a lot of the audits, and in that I get to see a lot of companies. And the reason that the city let me do that was because they said as I'm auditing and seeing what other people are not doing or not doing as well as they should, I can come back and perfect those things in our organization. So
wow, Michael, you just touched my favorite topic, audit. And changing a little bit of gears, I would like to know if there are any emerging trends, especially in the audit universe, that you feel particularly exciting about.
Yeah, well, I do. ISO 2, NIST updated their standards to meet ISO last year, but ISO, they finished it in October. And then ISO came out with the new version. Well, they finished in September, I think it was. And ISO came out with the new version, updated, with 154 countries buying into it the next month. So I said, NIST is good, don't get me wrong. But if you can get the organization to do ISO, it helps with that audit. Then you actually have a standard that they meet with. You can still do an internal audit for against NIST, either one, but doing that audit and then having the CISO go. I always go through do a cursory myself, so as part of my risk assessment, my gap assessment, and then I bring the audit team in 4 times a year minimum as we're going through things. Or where are we not compliant? What are we doing wrong? And and unfortunately, I find in 80% of organizations, the auditors are either not trained in cybersecurity, they're not trained in the audit. So when I've come in as a consultant, I've asked to do training of their auditors for free. I mean, they can just take, follow me around, so that when I leave the consulting assignment, I know that they're taken care of. Otherwise, I
Okay.
know that consultants are supposed to come in every year and be there and be there. I always get teased. They say, "How do you make a living? You keep giving it." I said, "Because you'll recommend me to somebody else."
I know. I just want to get your thoughts about artificial intelligence, how we can use it for the better audit life cycle.
A lot of the AIs, unless it is one that you own, and if it's
Hmm.
a service or a product, if you're using the public AIs, even if you have a contract with it, like ChatGPT and such, they're using that information to train their AI.
Yeah.
And you don't know the security, you don't know anything. So I would be very, very careful in doing that. There are some governance, risk, and compliance softwares that you can use that will say these are the standards this organization has to meet. And yes, we've got these in there. You're updating it, but it's more of a machine learning than it would be AI.
Okay.
But I would be very, very careful because one CEO from a company uploaded a PowerPoint he had done 4 years before for a presentation, and asked one of the available AIs to convert it into narrative, and he was fired because that information was now available, had the company's name on it, had all their statistics, all their. If for an audit, when I do audits, I do certification audits. I won't even take the material off site
Hmm.
because I am terrified of something happened to it while it's in my presence. And I have done consulting for people and had auditors come in and say, I did consulting for Department of Financial Services they have the big cyber thing in New York. They have to meet if you're an insurance company or if you are a financial firm. And they called me and they said, the auditor is insisting we let them take the materials. I said, based on what? Which standard are they following? She said, what?
Their own.
I said, ask them what control they're doing, what standard they did, and who owns that standard. They said, well,
Mhm.
it's our policy. I said, we weren't given that policy, and New York State didn't have it as part of their directive. So therefore, it's not part of the policy. And we're not, I said, you have the right. We will set up secure lines for you, a secure thing where we will show you screenshots and such but we have our own encrypted, etc. We will show it to you, but you can't take it off premises. Nowhere. They want us to email them everything for a cyber audit. I'm like, okay, this is not good. And I did find out, this was a few years when they first started doing the audits. I found out that the company they were using, or the audit company they were using, did not get it the second year. So I have whether their prices went up, whatever, but I have we refused to do it because they said, well, all the other clients do. And I said, shame on them.
Very good point. Thank you.
And I think it's important when having an audit done that you say no. We don't
Mhm.
have to share that is, and what I do is I put a policy together that's signed by senior management saying when you have an audit done, how the process has to be done. And you can say, our policy forbids me from sharing this. Look, it's signed by the board of directors. So I have policies for everything. If they ask for something, I got it here. Hold on, it's probably in my purse, but I've got a policy.
Good.
And
Good. Good.
they say don't have too many policies. To me, it's like a permission slip. I can say I don't have permission to give it to you.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that so it makes a big difference. I hope that answers your question.
Yes. Yes. It does. Thank you. I really appreciate your thoughts. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, people give too much away for free, and then they want to know why they're getting hacked. Well, you gave it to the auditor that was hacked.
Yeah. Definitely.
So, how we can encourage more diversity and inclusion in the cybersecurity field, and why do you think it's important, or it's
Well,
not?
I think, for instance, at my daughter's school, it was public school. When she was 9, they had an after-school program, and it was supposed to be 10, but she came home and said, I'm embarrassed. She said, I'm 9 years old and I can't even program, not even in BASIC. I said, the fact that you know what basic is, she said, but her friends were all, in the fifth grade. And she said, it's humiliating. They're in fourth grade. She was in third. No, third, fourth, 9 years old is from fourth grade. They're in fifth grade. And you had to be in fifth grade. She said, it's humiliating. So I went to the person that did the after school program and I said, she's humiliated. And he said, well, if she's humiliated, she's probably going to get into it. And now, she does, she's a data scientist, and a data
Wow.
engineer. She went for both and, very heavy in AI and machine learning and Python. And, but if she had not had that at 9,
Mhm.
it would have made a big difference, and it was, I think that introducing it earlier to men and women in schools is critical. I think
Mhm.
that, like in this school, they didn't have it as part of the curriculum. So the PTA got together, got a grant from the city, and they put, or a federal grant, whichever it was, and they put together an after school program. So if the students' parents couldn't afford it, it was covered. So 100% of the students that wanted to attend could attend the after school program. And I think that that's important to do. I think for organizations themselves, as people are coming in to, I think first of all, every school I think should have a class that they recommend today. How do you work if you don't understand something in cybersecurity? Whether you're whatever your job's going to be. They offer math, they offer history, you have all these requirements. I think that a course in cybersecurity or information security should be required even in high schools and colleges. I mean, really do.
And to your point, Michael, we're trying to always do these trainings in the corporate and all the companies about phishing, anti-phishing. That should be started in kindergarten. Don't do this. Don't take this because the kids now have access to the tablets, all the technology. And if we don't train them at that age, it will be
Yes,
much harder, as we know.
absolutely. And there is a book out written for children on cybersecurity and information security. It's written for I think for preschool and then high school. I forget this. There's a few of them out there now. So it's parents can start reading it to their kids instead of reading. We're going to read Cinderella, and then we're going to read about how Cinderella took care of the cyber attack for this.
Exactly. I like that.
You know, Rapunzel didn't let down her hair because they didn't have multi-factor authentication. She didn't know who was
Wow, you are reinventing children,
But I think a parent who
sorry,
has the background can tell their children stories like that. They don't realize, they still realize it's a princess, but it's a different role.
definitely.
And no, but I definitely think for even organizations that I think most training is boring.
Hmm.
And, it's, there's some exciting trainings out there, but people make them, first of all, they're monotone. They're reading the same material each time. They have a pre-test and an after-test that is embarrassing. The last, what's information security? Okay, fine. But we've already talked about that. So information security, we do want to say, of course, that it covers all information, whether it's electronic, whether it's physical, what's photographs, whether it's spoken, it's all information. And I think explaining that and the difference between cyber, cyber doesn't happen in an elevator. That's information security. And I think explaining the differences. And
Hmm.
I think if organizations said, hey, this is what machine learning is, this is what AI is, this is what happens. And I'm a big component of AI. I use it, to create birthday cards for friends and, different things, but I would never use it um, where I'm uploading personal information or business
Hmm.
information. And I think that that's important to explain. Feel free to go back and don't put your birthdays in when you're saying, happy birthday. Don't put the date in for somebody's birthday on when you're using Chat GPT. Don't put this in, don't put that in. And you could just say happy 18th birthday. People know the year they were born then, but it's they so what if they're 81 now? You just put a happy 18th birthday, the person will be happy. So it's I think that doing the training so that it's not boring for the employees is a big start. I think
Hmm.
having a mentorship program for employees who want to learn a little bit extra about cyber, maybe having if you can get the cyber team, information security team to come in and say, hey, we're going to do a lunchtime hangout. Anybody that wants to learn during this time, feel free to come in. Bring your lunch. You know, it's going to be a brown paper. You know, it's not training. We're hanging out, and we're going to, you know, help build your skill sets. People say, what's in it for me? But we're going to give you a little certificate that say you completed it. You bring this back to your boss. You send it into HR, and they're going to see, hey, this person did this. They're going to see that you're learning. And I think putting together a reward program in just a certificate you buy at Dollar Tree, you know, they have those nice certificates that look pretty, and you don't even have to. Or you can put it on AI. You know, download a certificate. I think that that's important, and I think that there's basic awareness training has got to be interesting and not the same thing all the time.
Well, thank you so much, Michael, for joining us for this podcast episode. It was wonderful to have you. And I know I had a great time listening. I learned so much from you, as well as I'm sure Annette and Claudia can agree.
Yeah, and
Thank you
definitely,
so much,
I encourage
Michael.
you. Yeah, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. You know, I mean, I do check LinkedIn. If people, the only thing is, I ask vendors not to. If you want to, you know, don't try to sell to me on LinkedIn because I'll unfriend you. You know, if I know you at a conference, you know, if you can't bother going to a conference to, you know, to be a vendor there, I think joining the ISC2 chapter for people that are not, if it's not the New Jersey chapter, which you know, I think it's the best chapter. That's why I joined it. But and I have a friend of mine from Casablanca that joined, and another friend from, because it's such a great chapter. But I think going to chapters, going to meetings, attending conferences, and networking is extremely important before people are ready to make the move.
Thank you for joining us for this podcast episode. More to come from the Unencrypted Chatter podcast from the ICT New Jersey chapter, and more to come from Jersey Girls in Cyber. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I look
Thank
forward to
you.
hearing the other people's podcast when they come on. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.